Two concert seats are glowing on a screen. They are not perfect seats, but they are together, the date works, and the price looked manageable when the search began. The buyer has already checked with the person going with them. They have compared sections, watched better seats disappear, and entered their card details. In their mind, the purchase is almost finished. Then the checkout starts asking new questions. Protect the tickets in case plans change. Choose a delivery method. Upgrade the experience. Act before the reservation expires. The total at the bottom no longer resembles the number that first made the seats feel affordable. The buyer declines one option, pauses at another, checks the date again, and finally accepts protection they had never considered before opening the page. Why does declining an optional extra feel less like saving money and more like accepting a risk? Because the most effective checkout pressure does not remove choice. It reorganizes choice so that acceptance feels protected, normal, and easy, while refusal feels like taking responsibility for whatever happens next. Across travel bookings, food delivery, online retail, ticketing, and software subscriptions, the objects change. The structure often does not. The checkout is not merely asking what the customer wants, it is asking which possible future problems the customer is willing to own. And the pressure becomes strongest only after the customer has already decided to buy. Before the seats were chosen, the buyer was comparing possibilities. Now those possibilities have narrowed into one imagined evening. 2 people are going. The date is marked. The view from the section has been inspected. The tickets have begun to feel less like an option and more like something temporarily possessed. Walking away now is not the same as never starting. It means reopening the search, risking worse seats, repeating the conversation, and surrendering the small future that has already formed around the purchase. That shift is easy to miss because nothing dramatic happens on the screen. The product page becomes a checkout page. A button changes. The colors remain familiar. But the question inside the customer has changed. At the beginning, it was, "Is this worth buying?" At the end, it becomes, "What could still go wrong?" A couple booking a weekend away reaches that moment after nearly an hour of searching. They have compared neighborhoods, read reviews, checked the train, and found a room within budget. One of them has already pictured breakfast near the hotel. The other has sent the link to a friend who lives nearby. Then the room is described as non-refundable. A protection offer appears. The couple are no longer evaluating an abstract insurance product. They are evaluating the imagined weekend with a new shadow over it. Illness, a missed train, a family emergency. Money lost because they clicked the wrong answer. The offer did not create those possibilities, but its timing can make them suddenly vivid. The room has not been paid for, yet it has already acquired a place in their plans. That is the quiet power of selection. Once one option survives the comparisons, the alternatives stop feeling equally real. The customer is no longer deciding among 10 hotels. They are deciding whether to protect this hotel, this train, this breakfast, this weekend. A refusal can therefore feel larger than the price of the insurance. It can feel like withdrawing care from something the customer has already begun to value. This is why checkout has a form of leverage that ordinary advertising does not. The customer has invested attention. They have made comparisons. They may have coordinated with other people. They are tired of choosing, but they are no longer emotionally standing at the beginning. The purchase has crossed from consideration into completion. And once someone wants to finish, a small design decision becomes unusually powerful. Which outcome happens if the customer does nothing? In 2012, that question reached the Court of Justice of the European Union through a German flight booking case. The company was ebookers.com Deutschland. A customer selecting a flight saw a list of travel costs. Alongside the fare, taxes, and fees, cancellation insurance was calculated automatically. The insurance was not compulsory, but it was already inside the total. To travel without it, the customer had to notice a message and actively reject what the page had included. Imagine the practical difference from the traveler's side. One person notices the insurance immediately and removes it. Another assumes every item in the total is necessary. A third sees the notice but decides that reopening the calculation is not worth the delay. All three technically had access to the same information. Only one outcome required no work. The page did not need to predict who would miss the charge. It only needed enough customers to continue. That small tick carried a large assumption. Continuing meant acceptance. Refusing meant detection, interpretation, and intervention. A German consumer protection association challenged the practice. The dispute eventually reached the European Court, which ruled that flight cancellation insurance was an optional price supplement and could not be included by default. It had to be offered on an opt-in basis. The judgment did not declare that travel insurance itself was illegitimate. It addressed something more precise. An optional purchase should not become the starting position merely because the customer failed to remove it. A default can be useful. It can save time, preserve sensible settings, and reduce pointless effort. Every interface needs some starting condition. But a default also distributes labor. One side can continue, the other side must stop, notice, and change the path. Research across many kinds of decisions has found that defaults can influence what people choose, although the strength of the effect varies by context. Part of that influence comes from effort. Part can come from the default appearing to carry an implicit recommendation. Part can come from the simple preference not to reopen a decision that seems settled. At checkout, those forces meet a customer who already wants closure. Even without a pre-ticked box, the same direction can be suggested through language. Recommended, best value, most popular, complete protection. The label does not force the decision. It changes the social meaning of the options. One path looks like the informed choice. The other begins to look like a deviation that requires confidence. So the first layer of the trap is not the absence of choice. It is the unequal effort assigned to each outcome. But inertia does not explain everything. A customer may clearly see the decline button. They may understand the price. They may know the extra is optional. And still, the word no can feel unsafe. Shortly before midnight, a traveller searches for a hotel room. They have an early meeting in another city. The cheaper rooms have poor reviews. The better rooms are outside the budget. One listing finally appears to solve the problem. Then the page begins to speak in a different emotional register. Limited availability. Other people are looking. A discount is about to end. Only a small number of rooms remain. The messages may contain useful information. A room really can be scarce. A rate really can change. Another traveller may genuinely be viewing the same property. The problem is not that urgency is always false. The problem is that urgency can be presented without the context needed to judge its importance. A statement can be technically connected to reality, while still creating a much stronger impression than the underlying facts justify. In 2017, the United Kingdom's Competition and Markets Authority
opened an investigation into online hotel booking sites. Its concerns included the way search results were ranked, pressure selling claims, discount comparisons, and charges revealed late in the booking process. The investigation examined whether messages about how many people were viewing a room, how many rooms remained, or how long a price would last could create a false impression or rush customers. It also examined whether discounts were being compared fairly and whether unavoidable charges appeared early enough. Consider how this changes the traveller's field of vision. A crossed-out price makes the current price look like a gain. A message that several people are viewing the room makes hesitation feel costly. A ranking near the top can feel like a quality judgment, even when commercial factors also influence placement. None of these elements has to issue a command. Their force comes from arriving together, each narrowing the amount of uncertainty the customer feels able to tolerate. By 2019, 6 major sites had given formal commitments to change practices: Booking.com, Expedia, Agoda, Hotels.com, ebookers, and Trivago. The commitments were not a court verdict that every message on every page was false. They were a regulatory response to a pattern in which the clarity, accuracy, and presentation of information could shape the decision as much as the information itself. That distinction matters. A checkout does not need to invent a disaster. It can make one possibility occupy more of the customer's attention. The late-night traveller sees a non-refundable rate and imagines the 1 week in which everything goes wrong. The protection plan is described by what it preserves. The decline option is experienced through what it leaves exposed. Scarcity adds another pressure. The opportunity may disappear.
Social proof adds another. Other people appear to be choosing more quickly. Recommendation language adds another. The prudent customer seems to know which option to take. Each signal can be modest on its own. Together, they change the emotional weather around the button. The traveller is tired enough to want the decision over, but alert enough to simulate every reason the trip might fail. The insurance prompt does not need to establish that cancellation is likely. It only needs to make the loss easy to picture. And once the product feels vulnerable, refusing the add-on stops feeling like a neutral subtraction. It begins to feel like a statement. I have considered the future, and I am willing to be wrong. The next mechanism is quieter. It does not make the customer afraid of losing the product. It makes the customer reluctant to lose the effort already spent buying it. A person arrives home after a long day and opens a food delivery app. 2 people are hungry. One wants something light, the other does not. A restaurant is selected, then rejected because the delivery time is too long. Another restaurant works, but the order is below the minimum. An extra side is added, a meal is customized, an address is confirmed. The customer reaches the checkout expecting to pay roughly the total they saw while building the basket. Then the price expands. A delivery charge, a service fee, perhaps a small order charge, perhaps a local or regulatory fee, perhaps an offer to pay for priority. Then the tip screen arrives, carrying a different kind of question from all the others. In December 2024, the United States Federal Trade Commission and the Illinois Attorney General took action against Grubhub. Their complaint alleged that the platform advertised low-cost or free delivery while adding mandatory service charges later in the ordering process, and that the way those charges were described could mislead diners about what the money covered. Grubhub agreed to an order requiring it to disclose the true cost of delivery and to a monetary judgment under which it would pay $25 million, nearly all designated for consumer refunds. The order also addressed other alleged conduct involving subscriptions, workers, accounts, and restaurant listings. The entered order makes an important distinction. The case was not simply about diners disliking high prices. Regulators alleged that the way the price was presented obscured the true delivery cost until the customer was further into the transaction. That is a competition problem as well as a personal one. A restaurant or platform displaying a fuller price at the beginning can appear more expensive than a rival that reveals part of the cost later. The clearer seller may lose the click before the real totals can be compared. The food ordering moment matters because the customer can still leave. Nothing physically prevents them from closing the app. But leaving means returning to hunger, rebuilding a basket, negotiating another choice, or admitting that 20 minutes of effort produced no dinner. The final total is therefore competing with two prices. One is the lower number that attracted the customer. The other is the cost of starting again. Experimental research on drip pricing has repeatedly found evidence that revealing charges later can reduce further search and lead consumers to complete purchases they might not have selected if the full price had been clear earlier. A United Kingdom government-commissioned study manually examined 525 websites and apps across retail, hospitality, entertainment, and transport and communication. It found at least one dripped fee in 72% of the sampled providers. That number does not mean every fee was unlawful or every customer was harmed. The study included both mandatory and optional charges. Its value is in showing how normal the sequence has become. Attract attention with one price, then reveal more of the cost after the customer has entered the buying process. At dinner checkout, the sequence also compresses decisions that do not belong to the same category. A mandatory platform charge is not the same as an optional tip. A government-imposed fee is not the same as a faster delivery upgrade. A membership trial is not the same as an extra side. But when they arrive together under one total, the customer must decode who receives each payment, what declining it changes, whether it will recur, and whether abandoning the order is worth the time. The page feels like a bill. Psychologically, it is still a series of negotiations. And those negotiations are not separate interruptions. They are converging on one deeper operation. The checkout is transferring responsibility for future regret from the seller to the buyer. A protection plan does not merely offer protection. It asks the customer to formally decline protection. A priority upgrade does not merely offer speed. It asks the customer to accept the slower outcome. A recommended bundle does not merely offer value. It can make the basic product appear incomplete. A tip prompt does not merely request money. It can place the customer inside a moral decision at the exact moment they are trying to finish a commercial one. Before this point, no appears to mean, I do not want the extra. After this point, no can feel like something else. I accept the risk. I accept the delay. I accept the possibility of regret. I accept being less generous. I accept receiving less than the version the page recommends. That old tick in the ebookers case now looks different. It did not only make insurance easier to buy, it placed the uninsured outcome behind an active act of refusal. The customer had to become the author of the risk. And if making refusal emotionally expensive can produce more revenue, the design stops being a collection of helpful prompts. It begins to shape the products and business models around it. A freelance designer receives a project late in the afternoon. The client needs revisions by morning. The files require software the freelancer no longer has. They search, reach a pricing page, and see a monthly figure. The work is waiting. The deadline is near. Access matters more than contract architecture. One option appears to offer what the freelancer needs. Use the software now, pay month by month. But payment rhythm and commitment length are not the same thing. In 2024, the United States government filed a civil complaint against Adobe and 2 executives after a referral from the Federal Trade Commission. The complaint alleged that Adobe pushed customers towards an annual paid monthly subscription, pre-selected it as the default, prominently displayed the monthly price, and failed to disclose the early termination fee clearly enough during enrollment. According to the complaint, cancelling during the first year could trigger a fee equal to half of the remaining monthly payments. Adobe disputed the allegations. Then, in March 2026, the Justice Department announced that Adobe had agreed to a proposed stipulated order. If entered by the court, it would require $75 million in civil penalties, $75 million in free services, clearer early termination disclosures, and easier cancellation. A settlement does not turn every allegation into a judicial finding. The documentary value of the case is the structure placed under scrutiny. A customer can see a monthly number and experience it as a monthly decision, even when the commitment operates across a year. The interface foregrounds the unit that feels manageable. The future cost belongs to a different unit of time. For the freelancer, the checkout solves an urgent present problem. The freelancer may cancel weeks later, after the urgent project is delivered. Now the plan is viewed from the opposite end. The monthly price that once felt flexible is joined by a calculation based on the remaining months. The decision that looked temporary at enrollment has become expensive to reverse. The emotional asymmetry has changed sides. At sign-up, continuing was easy. At cancellation, leaving becomes the decision that carries the visible cost. The exit condition belongs to a future version of the same person. After the deadline, after the project, after the need for the software has changed. That future self is not in the room. The present self is staring at unfinished work. This is how a long obligation can enter through a short price. The customer is not necessarily careless. They may read several lines, compare plans, and understand that the word annual is present. But understanding a term and giving it equal psychological weight are not the same. The large monthly figure answers the immediate question: what will leave my account now? The termination condition answers a question the customer is not yet trying to solve. What will it cost to stop later? The safest looking option can therefore be the one whose real cost depends most heavily on the future. And once businesses learn that placement, wording, timing, or default state can change how many customers cross that line, checkout design becomes more than presentation. It becomes an economic surface. There does not need to be a secret meeting in which someone decides to make people anxious. The incentive can emerge through ordinary optimization. A company does not need every customer to buy every extra. It needs a small rise in protection plan attachment across millions of bookings, a small increase in premium delivery, a small reduction in subscription abandonment, a small rise in bundle uptake, a little less resistance to the final total.
At scale, tiny yeses are not tiny. They are a revenue stream. Inside a large digital business, the language can sound clinical. Conversion, attachment, completion, drop-off. Those measurements are not evidence of wrongdoing. They are ordinary tools for understanding whether a product works. But they can describe the seller's success without capturing the customer's quality of consent. A screen can improve by one metric while becoming harder to evaluate by another. The interface can then be tested one piece at a time. Place the recommendation above the basic option. Change "decline" to a sentence that names the risk. Show the monthly price more prominently than the annual commitment. Move the total lower on the page. Require one extra click to continue without the bundle. Make the upgraded choice feel complete and the basic choice feel unfinished. Not every test is manipulative. A checkout that remembers an address can save effort. A clear recommendation can help a customer who lacks expertise. A sensible default can prevent an error. Faster completion can be a genuine improvement. The revealing question is whether the reduction in friction is symmetrical. Is it equally easy to accept and refuse? Is the cost as visible as the benefit? Does the customer see the realistic total before investing heavily in the transaction? Does the design help the customer understand the choice or mainly help the seller record a conversion? Return to the Grubhub order. The late fee is no longer only an unpleasant surprise at the end of a dinner purchase. It belongs to a system in which the lower entry price can influence which restaurant the customer selects, while the final checkout meets a person who has already built the meal. The initial number competes for attention. The later number collects from commitment. Research on online choice architecture describes a broad set of practices involving choice structure, information, and pressure. Defaults, scarcity claims, rankings, urgency, and friction are often examined separately because each has a different form. But a customer does not encounter them separately. They encounter one screen after another during one narrowing period of attention while trying to complete one practical task. This is why the trap can be built without one spectacular deception. Many decisions that appear individually defensible can point in the same commercial direction. The initial price attracts. The sequence invests the customer. The prompts introduce risk. The labels imply a norm. The final button offers escape. So what happens when the law forces the price to become clearer? In the United States, a federal rule now requires a more honest opening number in two highly visible markets. The Federal Trade Commission's rule on unfair or deceptive fees took effect in May 2025. It covers live event tickets and short-term lodging. When a business advertises a price for those products, the total price, including mandatory charges, must be disclosed clearly and prominently. The rule also prohibits misrepresentations about fees and requires certain information before the customer agrees to pay. This is not cosmetic. If one ticket seller advertises the real total, while a competitor advertises a lower partial price, the transparent seller can look more expensive even when it is not. All-in pricing makes comparison more realistic before the customer chooses seats, imagines the night, or becomes reluctant to start again. The practical effect is easiest to see before a seat is chosen. When the displayed ticket price already includes mandatory service and fulfillment charges, the customer can compare sections using numbers closer to what will actually be paid. A cheaper-looking seat cannot wait until the final screen to reveal that it was never cheaper. The rule does not make tickets inexpensive. It makes the comparison less dependent on how far the customer has traveled through the checkout. It moves information closer to the moment when information can still change the search. The rule also draws a boundary that matters for this documentary. Optional ancillary products, such as a protection plan the customer can genuinely decline, do not have to be folded into the mandatory total in the same way. That is logical. An optional product is not part of the unavoidable price. But it means a checkout can comply with a total price rule and still surround the purchase with emotionally weighted extras. The number can become clearer while the meaning of no remains loaded. Britain has followed a related direction. The earlier hotel booking investigation required major platforms to change practices around promotions, scarcity messages, rankings influenced by commission, and hidden charges.
Then, in April 2025, a new consumer protection regime under the Digital Markets, Competition and Consumers Act came into force, giving the Competition and Markets Authority
direct enforcement powers over unfair commercial practices. The law can demand clearer prices, challenge misleading claims, and penalize prohibited conduct. But no rule can make every commercial interface emotionally neutral. Nor should neutrality be confused with the absence of persuasion. Businesses are allowed to explain benefits. A real shortage can be disclosed. A useful add-on can be recommended. A premium option can be worth the price. The harder line concerns asymmetry. In the ebookers case, removing the pre-selected insurance repaired one form of asymmetry. The customer could no longer acquire the supplement through silence. But an empty box does not answer every question around it. How is the protected option described? How visible is the decline path? Does the language imply that refusal is reckless? Is the basic product presented as sufficient? How many other decisions arrive before payment? Legal disclosure and psychological neutrality are not the same standard. Transparency can reveal the number. It does not automatically remove the pressure attached to the decision. And when the options remain technically visible and legally optional, the burden of resisting them returns to the person at the screen. A parent finishes a late shift and opens a delivery app on the journey home. 2 children are waiting. Dinner is already later than promised. The basket is complete when the total rises. The page asks about a tip, priority delivery, a membership trial, and one more item that might unlock a saving. Every answer is available. But availability is not the same as costlessness. The parent must work out which charge is mandatory, which payment reaches the courier, which upgrade changes the service, whether the trial will renew, and whether leaving the checkout will cost more time than the money it saves. This is not a test of intelligence. It is a test of spare attention. The person buying in a second language may need longer to decode the distinction between billed monthly and monthly plan. The person under financial stress may calculate each extra carefully while also feeling the greatest fear of a costly mistake. The person buying medicine for a sick relative, transport after a cancelled train, or a hotel after a missed connection is not approaching the interface as a relaxed analyst. Consider another buyer at an airport after a cancellation. The replacement flight is expensive, their phone battery is low, a family member is waiting for an arrival time. The checkout offers a flexible fare, insurance, a seat, baggage, and priority boarding. In a quiet room, those choices might be examined one by one. At the gate, the dominant need is movement. The interface has not created the emergency, but it can earn more from the fact that the emergency has reduced the customer's ability to wait. Urgency belongs to their life before it belongs to the page. That is what gives the page leverage. Researchers debate how broadly concepts such as decision fatigue should be applied, and the effects are not identical in every setting. The safer observation is concrete. Each additional prompt requires work. Who receives this fee? What happens if I decline? How likely is the risk? Does this renew? Is the basic option enough? Can I still go back? That burden accumulates while the customer is pursuing a different goal. They did not open the app to evaluate platform economics. They opened it to feed their children. The freelancer did not arrive to study the difference between payment cadence and contract length. They arrived to finish a job. The traveler did not begin by comparing insurance exclusions. They began by trying to sleep near a meeting. A marketplace can be formally rich in choice while charging an attention premium to the people with the least attention available. The cost may appear as a few pounds, a few dollars, a recurring membership, an upgrade, or protection that was never independently evaluated. The deeper inequality is not simply who understands the screen. It is who has the time, calm, language, and confidence to refuse perfectly. A system that requires perfect vigilance at the moment of greatest pressure can profit from ordinary human limitation, without any customer ever being physically forced. That is why the useful defense cannot be a catalogue of tricks. A new label will appear, a new bundle will be tested, a different fee will be separated from the total. A countdown may become a popularity message. A pre-selected box may become a bright recommendation. The surface can change faster than any checklist. The unit of the decision has to change. The concert buyer is still looking at the 2 seats. The protection offer is still there. So is the warning about time. So is the upgraded option. So is the larger total. But there are now 2 transactions on the screen. The first is the thing the buyer came to purchase, 2 seats for 1 evening. The second is a collection of decisions about fear, speed, protection, status, generosity, and future regret. The buyer does not need to prove that every extra is worthless. Some protection plans pay out. Some upgrades save time. Some bundles are genuinely cheaper. Some recommendations are useful. The separation asks a cleaner question. Would this extra still be worth buying tomorrow on a blank page, without a countdown, without a recommended label, and without the original product already waiting in the basket? That question will not always produce no. It can produce a more honest yes. Because genuine choice is not merely the presence of a decline button. It is the ability to evaluate the extra outside the pressure that created the desire for it. The checkout's most valuable product may not be insurance, priority, convenience, or protection. It may be relief from the responsibility the page has just taught the customer to feel. Once the product and that fear become separate purchases, the pressure loses its disguise. This channel examines the systems shaping ordinary decisions before they become invisible.